My sister wore white to my wedding, gave a speech calling me the practice daughter, and handed my husband her phone number in case he changes his mind. My parents laughed. 2 years later, she called me at 3 a.m. sobbing, "I need somewhere to stay, he left me." I asked her one question, the line went dead. My sister wore white to my wedding. Not ivory, not champagne, white white. The kind of white everyone notices and pretends not to. She stood up during the toasts, tapped her glass with a butter knife, and said she wanted to say something about her big sister. Then she looked at me and said, "You were always the practice daughter. I was the real thing." My parents laughed. My mother put her hand over her mouth the way she does when something is genuinely funny to her. My father tilted his head back and let it out. My husband, Daniel, did not laugh. He looked at her. And then he looked at me like he was seeing something he had not noticed before. "My name is Catherine. I was 34 years old, standing in the garden of the inn where we had spent more money than we should have on a wedding I did not even want. I had wanted to elope. Daniel said his mother would never forgive us. So I planned the whole thing while my sister, Lauren, called me every week to ask if I was sure about the centerpieces, in a tone that meant she thought they were ugly. I need to tell you something I have never said out loud before. I already knew, before the wedding, that something was wrong between Lauren and Daniel. I had seen them talking at my parents' house 6 months earlier. They were standing in the kitchen while I was in the bathroom. When I came back, they stopped. I asked what they were talking about. Daniel said work. Lauren said nothing. I chose to believe him. I am going to tell you this story the way it really happened, not the way I wish it had happened. And that means starting there with me knowing and pretending not to. After the toast, Lauren walked over to Daniel. Not to me, to him. She handed him a piece of paper. I watched her do it. She said, "In case you change your mind." He took it. He put it in his pocket, right there, in front of me, in front of everyone who was watching. My mother saw, my father saw, my mother's sister, Aunt Margaret saw. Nobody said anything. The band started playing something slow. Daniel put his hand on my lower back and said, "Let's not let her ruin tonight." I stayed. That is the part I have to own. I stayed at my own wedding after my sister gave my husband her phone number. I danced with him. I cut the cake. I smiled for photographs. I let my mother kiss my cheek while she whispered, "She is just jealous, sweetheart, you know how she is." And I nodded. I had been nodding at my mother about Lauren my entire life. I need to pause here because some of you already know where this is going. You have lived some version of this. If that is true, I need you to hit the like button and subscribe before I keep going. Tell me in the comments what time it is where you are. I want to know who is sitting with me right now. And if you have ever stayed in a situation longer than you should have because you were afraid of what leaving would look like, just write, "I stayed too." I will understand. Okay, let me tell you how I got here. I grew up in Ridgewood, New Jersey, on a street called Brookside Avenue. My father, Richard, was a commercial real estate broker. My mother, Diane, was a woman who had wanted to be an actress and became a real estate agent instead, which meant she spent her life selling other people's houses while talking about the life she could have had. Lauren was 3 years younger than me. She was louder. She was funnier. She was the one who made my parents laugh at dinner. I was the one who made my parents proud. There is a difference, and I learned it early. When I got into the University of Michigan, my mother said, "That is wonderful, honey," and then immediately started talking about how Lauren was only a year away from college applications, and had she thought about where she wanted to go. When I graduated with honors, my parents took us all out to dinner, and my father spent 45 minutes asking Lauren about her new job at a marketing firm. I sat there with my degree in my lap and ate a steak I do not remember tasting. When I got my first job as a forensic accountant, "I need you to remember that it matters later," my mother said. "That sounds so boring, but I am sure you will be great at it." Lauren said, "So you look at other people's receipts. That is actually perfect for you." I met Daniel when I was 29. He was a project manager for a construction company, handsome in a way that felt accidental, like he had not done anything to look the way he looked. He was kind to me in a way I was not used to. He remembered things I told him. He asked questions and waited for the answers. My parents loved him immediately. My mother said, "Finally, someone who can handle Catherine's seriousness." Lauren came to meet him at a barbecue at my parents' house. She wore a sundress that was too short and sat next to him on the patio couch. She asked him about his job, his hobbies, his ex-girlfriends. She laughed at everything he said. I watched from the kitchen window while I was getting drinks. I told myself she was just being Lauren. I had been telling myself that for 30 years. We got engaged after 14 months. Daniel proposed at a restaurant in Hoboken on the patio with the Manhattan skyline behind him. I said yes. I meant it. I loved him. Or I loved who I thought he was. I am not sure I know the difference anymore. The wedding planning took 8 months. Lauren offered to help. I said no. She offered again. I said no. She went to my mother and my mother called me and said, "You are being difficult. She just wants to be involved." So I let Lauren come to the florist with me. She talked the florist into changing the color of the bridesmaid bouquets from cream to blush without asking me. The florist looked at me. I said nothing. I was 34 years old, paying for half of my own wedding, and I could not tell my sister that I wanted cream flowers instead of blush ones. That is the kind of thing you do not realize is a problem until you say it out loud. The rehearsal dinner was the night before the wedding. Lauren showed up late. She was wearing a dress that was almost white, off-white, what my grandmother would have called ecru. My mother said, "Oh, that is such a pretty color on you." Nobody said what it looked like. Daniel watched Lauren walk in. I saw him watch her. He looked away when he noticed me seeing him. I went to the bathroom and stood with my hands on the sink for 3 minutes. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that my sister would not do that. I told myself that my husband would not let her. Then she wore white to my wedding. Then she gave him her number. Then he put it in his pocket. And I stayed. Here is the part I have never told anyone. The week after the wedding, I went through Daniel's pockets. He was in the shower. I found the piece of paper. It had Lauren's name and her phone number and a smiley face. I put it back. I did not confront him. I did not call her. I put it back and I made breakfast and I asked him if he wanted eggs or pancakes. That was Sunday. On Monday, I went to work at my desk at the forensic accounting firm in Morristown where I had been for 6 years. I looked at other people's financial records all day. I found things people had tried to hide. I was very good at it. And I went home and made dinner and watched television with a man who had my sister's phone number in his pocket, and I did not say a single word. I need to tell you something. I saw the signs. I am not going to pretend I did not. I told myself stories about why they did not mean what I knew they meant. I was good at telling myself stories. I had been doing it for years. The first red flag was the kitchen conversation. The second was the way Lauren started coming to our apartment more often after we got engaged. She would show up with wine, sit on our couch for hours, ask Daniel about his day, touch his arm when she laughed. I told myself she was just lonely. She had broken up with a boyfriend named Mark 6 months before the wedding. She was 31 and single and living in a studio apartment in Montclair, and I told myself she was just looking for attention anywhere she could get it. The third red flag was my mother. 2 weeks before the wedding, my mother called me and said, "You know, Lauren has always had a bit of a crush on Daniel. It is harmless. She just wishes she had found someone like him." I said, "What do you mean, a crush?" My mother laughed. "Oh, you know how she is. She is just jealous. It will pass." I hung up the phone and sat on my bed and I knew, and I went to the kitchen and asked Daniel what he wanted for dinner. I stayed through the wedding. I stayed through the first year of marriage, which was not bad and not good. It was a year of me watching. Daniel came home on time. He paid the bills. He was not doing anything obvious. That was the thing, he was not doing anything I could point to. He was just slightly elsewhere. He looked at his phone at dinner. He worked late on nights when I knew his projects were finished. He stopped asking me questions. He stopped waiting for my answers. I started losing weight, not on purpose. My clothes fit differently. My rings felt loose. I would sit across from him at dinner and I could not eat. I would put food in my mouth and chew and swallow, and I could not tell you what it tasted like. I stopped sleeping through the night. I would wake up at 2:47 every morning. I know the time because I looked at the clock every single time, and I would lie there and listen to him breathe and I would think about that piece of paper in his pocket. I gained it back 6 months later all at once, 15 pounds in 8 weeks. My body was trying to tell me something. I was not listening. The first real crack came 14 months after the wedding. I was doing laundry. Daniel's phone was on the dresser. It buzzed. I looked at the screen. A text message from a number I did not have saved. It said, "I miss you, can we talk?" I did not open it. I did not need to. I knew who it was. I had known for a year and 2 months and 4 days. I put the phone down. I finished the laundry. I folded his shirts. I put them away. That night I could not sleep. I got up at 3:15 a.m. and went to the kitchen and sat at the table in the dark. I sat there for an hour, and then I did something I had never done before. I called my old friend from college, a woman named Julia who lived in Philadelphia. I had not talked to her in almost 2 years. She answered on the third ring, groggy, confused. I said, "I think my husband is having an affair with my sister." There was a long silence. Then Julia said, "Catherine, tell me exactly what you have seen. Do not tell me what you think. Tell me what you have seen." I told her, the kitchen, the dress at the rehearsal dinner, the white at the wedding, the phone number, the texts, the way he looked at her, the way she touched him, the way my mother laughed. I told her everything. And when I was done, Julia said, "You have known this for over a year. Why have you not done anything?" I could not answer her. That was the question I had been running from. Not what was Daniel doing, not what was Lauren doing. What was I doing? Why had I not left? Why had I not looked at his phone? Why had I not called her? Why had I put the piece of paper back in his pocket? Why had I made him eggs instead of pancakes like that was a choice that mattered? Julia said, "You are a forensic accountant. You find things for a living. You have all the evidence you need. You just do not want to look at it." I hung up. I sat in the dark for another hour. And then I went back to bed and lay down next to him and did not sleep. That was the night I stopped pretending I did not know. I did not do anything about it yet, but I stopped pretending. I want to tell you something about this period. Everyone thinks the hard part is the confrontation. It is not. The hard part is the waiting. The hard part is Tuesday night when he is watching television and laughing at something, and you are sitting next to him, and you know everything and he knows nothing, and you have to decide whether tonight is the night, or if you can survive one more day of this. I survived 43 more days. For 6 weeks, I did my job. I went to my office in Morristown. I looked at spreadsheets. I traced money. I found a contractor who had been hiding $87,000 in fraudulent invoices. I found a nonprofit director who had been using the organization's credit card for personal vacations, totaling $12,400. I was very good at finding things, and every night I came home and I did not look at Daniel's phone. I did not ask him where he had been. I did not call Lauren. I waited. What I did instead was I started gathering. Quietly, methodically. The way I would for a case, I checked our phone records online, our account. My name was on it. I had every right to look. Daniel had been calling a number I did not recognize 3 to 5 times a day for 7 months, sometimes late at night. Sometimes during the workday, I cross-referenced the number with a reverse lookup site. It was Lauren's, I knew it would be. But seeing it in print, 973 555 8912, made it real in a different way. I checked his email. I knew his password. He had told me it once years ago and he had never changed it. His inbox had a folder labeled C at the bottom. I opened it. There were 142 emails from Lauren. The first one was sent 2 weeks before our wedding. The most recent one was sent 3 days ago. I did not read all of them. I read enough. I read enough to know that it had started before we got married. I read enough to know that he had told her he loved her. I read enough to know that she had asked him if he was sure he wanted to go through with the wedding. I read enough to know that he had said yes, he was sure, but he was not sure for how long. I printed everything. I put it in a folder. I put the folder in my desk drawer at work. I did not confront him. I was not ready, but I was not pretending anymore. I have to stop here for a moment. Because what I am about to tell you is the part I have gone back and forth about sharing. It is the part that made me realize this was not just my story. If you have ever found out that someone you trusted did the same thing to someone else before you, if you have ever sat with that knowledge and felt your entire chest go hollow, then you already know what I am about to say. Hit the like button. Write, "I found out too," in the comments if that is your story. and stay with me. The next part is where everything changes. While I was gathering evidence against Daniel, I did something else. I looked into Lauren's past, not her childhood, I knew that. I looked into her relationships. I called an old friend of hers, a woman named Bate who had stopped coming to family events a few years earlier. Bate and Lauren had been best friends since high school. Then, around the time Lauren turned 28, Bate disappeared. Nobody talked about it. My mother said they had a falling out, you know how girls are. I had never questioned it. I found Bate on Facebook. She lived in Red Bank. She was married. She had 2 kids. She had a profile picture of herself at the beach. I sent her a message. I said, "This is Catherine, Lauren's sister. I know we have not talked in a long time. I need to ask you something. I think my husband is having an affair with Lauren, and I think you might know something about what she is capable of." Bate called me the next day. She was crying before she said hello. She told me that when she and Lauren were best friends, Lauren had slept with Bate's fiancé 6 weeks before the wedding. Bate found out because the fiancé confessed. He said Lauren had pursued him for months. He said he was weak. He said he was sorry. Bate called off the wedding. She lost her deposit on the venue, $8,500. She lost her dress. She lost 3 years of her life. And Lauren had told everyone that Bate was crazy, that Bate had made it up, that Bate was jealous because she could not keep a man. Bate said, "Your mother called me. She said I was causing drama. She said Lauren would never do something like that. She said I must have misunderstood." I sat in my car in the parking lot of the Stop and Shop on Route 10 for 45 minutes after that phone call. I was not crying. I was doing math. I was counting the years. Lauren was 28 when she did that to Bate. I was 34 when she did it to me. Daniel was the 3rd man she had done this to. The first was Bate's fiancé. The second was a man named Chris who had been married to a woman Lauren worked with. I found that out later from someone else. The pattern was the same every time. She found a man who was attached. She pursued him. She told herself it was love. She destroyed whatever was there. And then she moved on when it stopped being exciting. When I found out about Bate, I pulled my car into that parking lot and I did not move for almost an hour. I was not crying. I was doing math. I was counting the years. I was realizing that everything Daniel told me about why he loved me, every single detail, was probably a lie. And if he lied about that, then everything he ever told me about our marriage was probably a lie too. I did not decide to fight back that day. I decided to stop fighting myself. There is a difference. Fighting back is something you do to someone else. Stopping fighting yourself is something you do for you. I had been fighting myself for 14 months. Telling myself I was paranoid. Telling myself I was imagining things. Telling myself that my sister would not do that. Telling myself that my husband would not let her. I was done fighting myself. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Her name was Margaret Hayes. She had an office in Morristown, 3 blocks from my office. I had never needed a lawyer before. I did not know what to expect. Margaret was 62 years old, gray hair cut short, glasses on a chain, and she listened to me for 45 minutes without taking a single note. When I finished, she said, "You are a forensic accountant. You have already done half my job for me. Bring me everything you have printed. And stop sleeping in the same bed as him. You do not have to leave yet. But stop sleeping in the same bed." I did not leave yet. I kept going to work. I kept coming home. I kept making dinner. I stopped sleeping in the same bed. I told Daniel I had been having trouble sleeping and I did not want to keep him awake. He said okay. He did not ask any more questions. That told me everything I needed to know. 3 weeks later, I had everything Margaret asked for. Phone records, emails, screenshots, a timeline. I had traced $3,200 in charges on our joint credit card to restaurants in Montclair, near Lauren's apartment, on nights Daniel told me he was working late. I had found hotel receipts. I had found everything. I did not confront him. I waited. I was waiting for something. I did not know what. Then Lauren called me at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was awake. I was always awake at 3 a.m. by then. My phone lit up, her name. I answered. She was sobbing. I could barely understand her. She said, "He left me. He left me. I need somewhere to stay. I have nowhere else to go. Please, I need you." I sat up in bed, I looked at the wall, I waited 3 seconds. Then I asked her one question. I said, "Did you think I would never find out?" The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone. The call timer said 47 seconds. I looked at it for a long time, then I got up. I went to the kitchen, I made coffee. It was 3:12 a.m. I sat at the table and drank a cup of coffee in the dark. And then I called Margaret at 8:00 a.m. and I said, "I am ready." The confrontation happened on a Sunday afternoon in our apartment. I chose Sunday because I knew Daniel would be home. I chose the afternoon because I wanted daylight. I wanted to see his face. I had asked my parents to come. My mother said, "What is this about?" I said, "You will see." My father said, "This sounds dramatic, Catherine." I said, "Yes, it is." They came. Lauren did not come. She had not answered my calls since 3 a.m. My parents sat on the couch. Daniel sat in the armchair. I stood by the window. I had the folder in my hand. I started small. I asked Daniel where he had been on March 12th. He said he did not remember. I said, "You were at a restaurant called Corso in Montclair. You spent $187 on dinner for two. I was at home. Who were you with?" He looked at my parents. Then he looked at me. He said, "I do not know what you are talking about." I opened the folder. I pulled out the credit card statement. I put it on the coffee table. He did not pick it up. He did not need to. He knew what it said. I asked him about April 4th, April 17th, May 2nd. Each time I put another piece of paper on the table. Each time he said nothing. My mother started to say something. I held up my hand. I had never held up my hand to my mother before. She closed her mouth. Then I pulled out the emails. The folder labeled C. I did not read them out loud. I did not need to. I put them on the table. Daniel looked at the top one. His face did not change color. It went gray. The way a building looks when the sun goes behind a cloud. He did not deny it. He did not try. He just sat there. My father said, "Daniel, tell me this is not true." Daniel did not answer. He looked at me. He said, "How long have you known?" I said, "I have known for 14 months. I have had proof for 6 weeks. I have been waiting for you to tell me yourself. You did not." My mother said, "Catherine, maybe this is a misunderstanding." I turned to her. I said, you knew she had a crush on him. You knew she came to our apartment. You knew she wore white to my wedding. You laughed at her toast. You laughed." My mother did not deny it. She looked at her hands. My father looked at her. That was the moment I understood that my mother had known something too, not about Daniel and Lauren, about my father, about something that had happened 30 years ago that I had never known about. I saw it on her face. The same gray. The same cloud. I am going to tell you something I did not expect to learn that day. My father had done the same thing to my mother in 1989. With a woman named Carol who worked at his office. My mother had found out. She had stayed. She had never told anyone. And when Lauren started doing the same thing to me, my mother did not stop it because stopping it would have meant admitting that she had not stopped it for herself. I did not learn this from my mother that day. She did not say it out loud. I learned it from her face. I learned it from the way she looked at the floor. I learned it from the silence that filled the room after I asked her why she had laughed. I pulled out one more piece of paper, the last one. It was a text message from Daniel to Lauren. Dated 3 days before our wedding. He had written, "I love you. I am going to marry her because it is the right thing to do, but I love you." I put it on the table. I did not say anything else. I did not need to. Daniel stood up. He walked to the bedroom. He closed the door. My father sat on the couch with his head in his hands. My mother did not move. I stood by the window and looked out at the street. There was a woman walking a golden retriever. The dog was pulling on the leash. The woman was laughing. I watched them until they turned the corner. Then I sat down at the kitchen table. I opened my laptop. I had already drafted the divorce petition. I had already signed it. Margaret had it on file. All I had to do was send the email. I looked at my mother. I looked at my father. I looked at the closed bedroom door. I sent the email. I thought I would feel vindicated. I did not. I felt tired. I felt like I had been carrying something very heavy for a very long time and I had finally been allowed to put it down. That is not the same thing as feeling good. But it is the same thing as being free. The divorce was finalized 7 months later. Daniel did not fight it. He signed everything Margaret put in front of him. I kept the apartment, I kept the car. I kept my retirement account, which had $94,000 in it. He kept his debt. The only thing I asked for that Margaret thought was unusual was a letter. I asked Daniel to write me a letter explaining what he had done and why. He wrote it. It was 3 pages. I read it once. I put it in the same folder with the emails and the credit card statements and the phone records. I have not opened it since. Lauren moved to Florida. She sent me a text message 6 months after the divorce. It said, "I am sorry for everything. I hope you can forgive me someday." I did not respond. I have not spoken to her in 2 years. My mother calls me every Sunday. We talk about the weather. We talk about my job. We do not talk about what happened. I do not know if we ever will. I sold the apartment in Morristown 6 months ago. I bought a small house in Chester, New Jersey on a street called Maple Avenue. It has a garden. I planted roses. I did not know I was someone who planted roses. It turns out I am. Julia came to visit last month. We sat on my back porch. She brought wine. We drank it. She said, "You look different." I said, "I am different." She said, "No, I mean you look like you are sleeping." I was. I had been sleeping through the night for almost a year. I had stopped waking up at 2:47. I had stopped checking my phone. I had stopped waiting for something to go wrong. Thank you for staying with me through all of that. I know it was a lot. If this story made you feel something or made you remember something, leave it a like and subscribe. And I want to ask you something in the comments, and I want you to be honest. Is there something you have been pretending not to know? You do not have to say what it is. Just write yes if you know. I will understand. There is another story in the description. I think it might find you at exactly the right time. Take care of yourself. You deserve someone who means that when they say it. I want to tell you one more thing before I stop. I do not hate Lauren. I thought I would. I spent months waiting for the hate to arrive. It never did. What arrived instead was something I did not expect. I felt sorry for her. Not the kind of sorry that makes you go back. The kind that makes you understand that whoever broke her did it a long time ago, and I was never going to be the one to fix it. That does not make what she did acceptable. It makes it make sense. And that is enough for me. I do not hate Daniel either. I do not think about him much. When I do, I think about the man I thought he was. That man never existed. I mourned him a long time ago. There is nothing left to mourn now. Last week I was in my garden. It was evening. The light was the color of honey. I was pulling weeds. I had been pulling weeds for an hour. My back hurt. My hands were dirty. And I realized I had not thought about any of it for 3 days. Not the wedding, not the phone number, not the emails, not the phone call at 3 a.m. 3 days, that is how long I had gone without carrying it. I sat back on my heels. I looked at the roses. They were red. I had chosen red because I wanted something that was not white. I sat there until it got dark. Then I went inside. I washed my hands. I made dinner. I ate it at my kitchen table. I washed the dishes. I went to bed. I slept through the night. That is the whole truth. That is all of it.